Let me use an example to illustrate the gains from trade in the Ricardian model of comparative advantage. We have two countries, Ghana and Burkina Faso, and two products, groundnuts, also known as peanuts, and cola nuts, which are another kind of nut that goes into Coca-Cola, a mild stimulant. And our productivity numbers are as given. One worker in Ghana makes 5 groundnuts, one worker in Ghana makes 8 cola nuts, in Burkina Faso one worker makes 4 groundnuts, and a worker makes 2 cola nuts. So Ghana is more productive at both, and Burkina Faso is less productive at both. Ghana has a comparative advantage at cola. It's better. The other way around. It's better than Burkina Faso, quite a bit better at cola nuts than it is in groundnuts. That's pretty obvious. So Ghana has a comparative advantage in cola nuts. Burkina Faso is worse at both, but it's less bad at groundnuts. So Burkina Faso has a comparative advantage in groundnuts. We derive the pre-trade prices using the method that I suggested you use in class, that the wage has to be equal in both sectors. So we get the pre-trade prices in Ghana, price of groundnuts over the price of cola nuts, 8/5. The pre-trade prices in Burkina Faso, price of groundnuts over the price of cola, 2/4. The groundnuts, as you can see, are expensive in Ghana, and groundnuts are cheap in Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso has comparative advantage in groundnuts, Ghana in cola nuts. When the countries open up for trade, the world price has to be in between, could be equal to, has to be in between the pre-trade prices. So the world price of groundnuts relative to the price of cola nuts has to be somewhere in between the pre-trade prices. Otherwise, of course, if it's equal, then there's no change in trade, and it can't be outside those range. Otherwise, everybody's only producing one good. Either if the price of groundnuts is really high after trade, if it's out here, then both countries are producing groundnuts. If the price of groundnuts relative to the price of cola nuts is below 2/4 over here, then everybody's producing cola nuts. So we can't have that in equilibrium. They have to be producing some of each. We can suppose, let's just suppose that the price ends up being 3/4. We can look at the production possibility frontier, the production possibility curve, and here's for Ghana. We have cola nuts on the y-axis, groundnuts on the x-axis. If there's just 1 unit of labor, Ghana can make 8 units of cola or 5 units of groundnuts. The slope of the production possibility frontier is given by the opportunity costs, the pre-trade prices, and now we can see that suppose Ghana were producing here, they'd now be able to trade along this line with slope negative 3/4. So that's the trading line, or the CPC, the consumption possibility curve. If Ghana specialized and only produced the 8 cola nuts, they'd be able to trade along this line, and so they'd be able to attain consumption that they couldn't obtain otherwise. Likewise, we go over to Burkina Faso. They can make 4 groundnuts or 2 cola nuts, and their production possibility frontier is given by this line with slope -1/2. Now they can trade along a line slope -3/4, a line steeper than that, or if they specialize in producing groundnuts, they can trade along this line here, and that's their consumption possibility curve, or consumption possibility frontier. And they could be theoretically then, if their trading partner is big and produces a lot of cola and wants to buy their groundnuts, they could consume at a point here, this many groundnuts and this many cola nuts, and that point is obviously outside of their production possibility frontier, and so that means that they're better off as a whole. They can now consume outside of their production possibility frontier. That's what we mean by the potential gains from trade, that you can be outside of your production possibility frontier and therefore potentially have more for everyone in the economy.